Authors and readers alike, welcome to another featured author interview. And we are now streaming live in our the Festival of Storytellers Facebook page and Readers Magnet YouTube channels. So if you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so. I'm your host, Red Sanchez, and joining us today to tell us more about his book, Mr. Stephen F. Verzal. And he's the author of the book, The Silent Badge and The Alaskan Has 7 Days. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm actually very excited to do this interview with you today. I'm just really curious about your book, and I'd like to know more about that. But before I guess the best way to start this interview is, can you tell us more about yourself, Stephen?
Well, my joined the army at the age of 19 and was in the military. Went into the military police back in the 70s and went from the military police. I got recruited by Anchorage Police Department, Anchorage, Alaska, and the Alaska State Troopers during the pipeline boom of the 70s. And I asked my wife at the time which one she wanted me to join, and she really didn't care. She just wanted to know which one paid the most money. So I checked into it, and it was Anchorage Police Department. So I joined Anchorage Police Department, and they were just hiring like crazy. City of Anchorage went from 56,000 people to 500,000 people in a matter of 300 in 3 years because of the pipeline boom. And the police department went from 35 to 500 in 3 years because they were building a long pipeline. So I had a friend, his name was Harry Kyer. He got out of the Army. He became my personal reference. So I joined Anchorage Police Department after 6 years in the Army. And that's how I became a police officer. I
Wow.
was kind of
And
fed
how,
up with military politics because I didn't like the way things were going as a military policeman. So I became what I called a real police officer. So I was on there until I got a disability due to an injury and I retired.
I'm
So
sorry to hear that. Mhm.
it was a really bad Wednesday for me. And and then after I retired, I got into retail, and then I got this idea of wanting to read books, and I worked on the Silent Badge. I worked on the Silent Badge for well over 30 years. And I had a nephew who wanted to become a police officer. And when they had the shooting in Ferguson, uh, Kansas City, I finally told myself I was going to finish it. So when I finished the book and I sent him the manuscript, he went, I do not want to be a police officer. And then I got the book published, and he said there was no way I want to be a police officer because he wanted to be happily married because police officers have the highest divorce rate of any occupation.
That's
And
true.
then I continued writing books, and then I started my murder mystery series. And then that's when I did The Alaskan Has 7 Days. And then I worked on my second manuscript, and now I'm working on my third manuscript, and I've got about five more in my head. And that's where my writing started.
Wow. That's a very great experience right there. And I'm just wondering though, how does it feel to be a police officer in Alaska? I mean, it's not easy in there, I guess. The weather, that's going to be challenging, especially if you're doing a hot pursuit to someone that might have committed a crime. Is that making your days difficult when that kind of scenario is going on?
Well, yeah, I live in Las Vegas now, And the big joke that we always used after living in Alaska for 10 years was that people in Las Vegas talk about cold. And I used to walk foot patrol when it was 30, 35 below zero. And the
Wow.
joke is in Las Vegas that if you spit, and then when the spit hits the sidewalk, if it doesn't turn into an ice cube, it's not cold. And yeah, that's one of my jokes I used to use is after I got in on my own, after all my training was done, they told me I was on dog patrol. And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, we have the World Dog Sled Championships going on. You're going to go to this corner and you're going to stop cars and let the dog sleds go by." And I went, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, we have the dog sled races going by for the next 4 days. And you just stop the cars, let the dog sleds go by, and then when the dog sleds go by, you let the cars go by." And I went, "Oh, okay." And there was things you just don't see in other towns. It's things you got to get used to when you're living up there.
Yeah, exactly. But with this book, The Silent Badge, why The Silent Badge? I mean, there might be some other titles in your head when you publish this book. Do
Very
you have?
good
Mhm.
question. The reason I made it the silent badge was twofold. Number one, um, a police officer, when a guy is an attorney, when he's a doctor, he comes home, if he sells insurance, he comes home and the wife goes, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I did a open heart surgery today." Or, "Hey, honey, I went to court and I sued um, and I got $3 million for us today, which was da 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 da." A couple has got to talk about what happened. And in my life, my wife did not want to discuss what happened, what I did today. It was always leave it at the front door. And with most police officers, the wife does not want to know what's going on. She she doesn't care. That's why the divorce rate is so high. And for that reason, police officers have a high divorce rate. They need to talk to somebody because the pressure is unbelievable. That's why the alcoholism rate is so high because they've got nobody to talk with. A lot of police departments have a bar that they go to and they talk to other police officers. They go, "Man, I almost got shot today because it really got scary at such and such a situation," and things like this. And the second thing is if a police officer has nobody to talk to, it's going to cause him to worry when he gets back on the street. And if he gets into an argument with his wife or his girlfriend, he could make a mistake on the street and he could end up being a silent badge, meaning he could get killed. And
Oh,
that's the reason I wrote the book. You've
wow,
got
that's
to have
interesting.
it's very important. You've got to have 100% of your mind and body on your job at all times because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, when I wrote this book, even though it's 40 years old, most of the things that are in the book still happen today. Some of the cases that I put in there are 40 years old, but they still happen. It's just the dates changed.
Exactly.
That's it.
I mean,
That's the only difference, you know?
I agree. And this scenes that you might have seen that might happen, let's just say way back in 1980s or 90s, it's still like happening right now, which is at some point it's really saddened me. But I guess that's how some maybe our life is, or it could be because it's just the criminals are just pretty much growing, or maybe some of these criminals are just trying to, adopt what they had, let's just say discovered in the past, or they want to try to use this kind of strategy to do this crime, uh, you know, on that particular day. But I also wanted to ask you this, Stephen, and with this book, Alaskan, or the Alaskan has 7 days. What made you publish this book, and why the Alaskan has 7 days?
You talk about my murder mystery?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, once I finished this book, all of a sudden I came up with this idea of a murder mystery. And I used part of it on what I had been going through, and I wanted a star character. So I used kind of myself and kind of a murder investigator in general. And I used this gentleman that I called the Alaskan, and I used him as an example. He's got a whole bunch of divorces under his belt, and he worked in a small department, and he was bored up there, and so he transfers to a big department. And now he's being forced to retire due to uh, his age. So he's got one more case. He's got to solve it within 7 days, or he's being forced to retire. So he
Oh,
gets so he's got to solve it within 7 days. So he's got a partner who's a little quirky, who gets in trouble, and but he's a great murder investigator. He just tends to do things that aren't quite right when he's not investigating things, and but he's a great partner. So they've got to solve this case within 7 days. It starts in Chicago, it comes up to Las Vegas, goes back to Chicago, and then they got to solve the case. And then all of my murder mysteries end in a cliffhanger, which causes the reader to have to buy the second book to find out what's going to happen. The second
right.
one takes place in Key West, Florida. The third one I'm working on takes place in Las Vegas. The fourth one's going to be on a cruise. The fifth one's going to be out in Roswell, New Mexico. Oh, I got a whole bunch of them up here.
That's great. At least you have those ideas right now already, even before you finish this whole sequel. But my I was just wondering what happened to the Alaskan. Was he able to? I mean, like you mentioned, you just want to keep your readers hanging in there for a while. But was he able to solve that case for 7 days, or was that gonna be in the second? Is it gonna be in the second book, or
You got
they
to
have
buy
to
the
really
book to
continue?
find out.
What
I
was
can't
that?
tell you. You got to buy the book to find out.
Exactly. Well, for those who are watching us live right now, might as well grab a copy of Steven's book. It's the other one is the Silent Badge, and the other one is the Alaskan has 7 days, and they're all available in Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. But I was just wondering, Steve, maybe you can show us a copy of the books that we're talking about today.
Which you want to see? The silent badge?
Yeah, we can start with the Silent Badge.
This is a silent badge. You know, a couple other things that I want to discuss about the silent badge. We still have time, right?
Yeah, we still have time. Absolutely. We have enough time.
I'm trying
Okay.
to bring this up on my virtual background.
It's okay. Maybe somewhere here, like below your jaw or something, or your beard. You can move that book somewhere in that area. Maybe
I
like maybe like this. Show it like this.
Let me try something here.
Oh, there you
Hey,
go. Oh, wow.
yeah,
Pretty smart.
University of Alaska.
Wow,
Okay.
that's a good looking one. Very simple.
Yeah. See, there's a couple other things I want to bring up about the silent badge. I'll show you the other book real quick.
Sure.
And then there's a couple other things I'd like to discuss.
That is the Alaskan has 7 days.
You'll have to get 7 days.
Uh, Maybe move it somewhere near your. Oh, there you go. There it is. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
my niece does all of my covers for me.
Mm, that's great. That's very
Uh,
creative.
some of the other things that I have done in the book, which we
Hmm.
haven't discussed, we still have time to discuss them, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Um, one of the things that was never discussed with me um, when I joined the police department, there's a very long process, and excuse me, is police officers candidates. They never really discuss getting into the police department, and it's a family decision if you're married. So if you are married and you want to be a police officer, you need to discuss it with your wife because and what you need to do if you know a police officer, your wives need to talk about it, and you need to ask your wife to talk to that wife and say, what are you going through as a wife of a police officer? Working the overtime, working the pressures, things like that. And another thing that I talk about in the book is, the overtime and not being around and things like this. Because if you go work for a police department that's shorthanded, you're going to be working a lot of overtime. And another thing that we never talked about when I joined the police department, because we did not have a big problem with it, was prejudice. When I joined the police department, we had Alaskans in our police academy. We had blacks, which was the terminology at the time.
Mhm.
Now it's African Americans. We had Orientals. We had whites. And the chief of police came into the academy and he introduced himself and said, "You are all blue brothers. We have no prejudice in the police department." And every day you're reading about a white cop shoots a black guy, a white cop shoots an Asian guy. And
Right.
one of the big things that I stress in the book is if you're prejudiced or you're biased towards a particular type of person, don't be a cop. And I talk about kindergarten kids play with each other, whether they're you know, black kids play with white kids. And in the first grade, they play with, and then in second grade, they play with everybody. And in third grade, but then all of a sudden in fourth grade, the black kids just play with black kids. And the white, why is it? Because prejudice starts at home. And you have got to keep the bias out of the job. Because if you start to become biased or prejudiced, it's going to make a big difference because there's 800,000 police officers on the road, and less than 1% are prejudiced. And they're ruining it for everybody. And the other thing I talked about was the way cops get killed. And when I was a police officer, 17% of police officers got killed at domestic disturbances. That was husband and wife duking it out. And now 22% are getting killed, which means it's gone up. And why
Yep.
is that? I mean, come on. I mean, police officers, they're getting into it. Why are they going in with such an open mind and they're not defending themselves? And the other thing that I brought up was police officers are not getting good with their firearms. We had an incident out here in Las Vegas. 6 police officers fired 87 rounds at a car and only
Oh
hit the
my
car
God.
18 times. They only hit the car 18 times out of 87 rounds. I mean, it's ridiculous that these guys are not good with their firearm. I mean, a car is so big, and
That's more than
police,
that's that's not even close to the half of the rounds, you know?
it's, and then one other thing that I bring up in the book, when I graduated from the police academy, 5 guys quit within 30 days because they said, man, I didn't know this is what police work was going to be like. They had no idea what police work was going to be like. And what I do is I give a chapter on domestic disturbances, felonies, traffic stops, being on the road by yourself, and on and on and on and on. So what I'm trying to do is get this into colleges for kids who are thinking about being police officers and trying to get it into police academies to give them an idea. Even though the cases are 40 years old, they're still going to run into the same stuff. You know, I've got 2 cases here where I was involved in teenage suicides. Well, kids are still going to commit suicide 40 years ago or tomorrow. You know, how do you react to them? You know, things like that. That's
Yeah.
why I wrote the book, to prepare them to hit the
Hmm.
street. So now I'm done. I've done my bit. But it's
Well,
important for a couple to talk prior to and during law enforcement career. That's important.
exactly. I definitely agree with that, Steve. Especially, being or serving the country is definitely something that you need to be ready with what might gonna happen to you once you go outside your, front door or your house. And anything can happen even at your own home. If you're a police officer, you handle the big cases, they can even try to do something bad to you even if you're at home. So that's one thing that is really true. We need to talk about it to our partners. We need to make sure that both party agrees. She needs to understand what is going to happen if you are outside talking to talking to strangers, stuff like that, doing an overtime, because it can somehow, you know well, definitely they're going to be worried about you, especially if you're outside in the middle of the night, right? So if he or she knows that you are doing what you are basically signing for, then I mean, I guess she'll be fine. Not until she'll hear a bad news or something like that. But my question here for you as well, Steve, is that what would be your message, or let's just say a valuable piece of advice to all police officer, or I mean, I'm not just saying about like police officer, but to those who are serving the country, serving the public, what would be your advice to them?
Say again, I'm sorry.
What would be your advice to everyone that is serving the public?
You talking about present police officers
Yeah, we can say it
or
like that.
people who want to be police officers?
Well, to those who are, currently, yeah, wanting to be a police officer, and maybe to those who are already in the position right now.
Well, if somebody wants to be a police officer, I would say it's a family decision, very much a family decision. And if you're not married and you're going to get married, you need to tell your spouse or spouse to be what you do. And you need to be upfront with them. You know, you need to tell them, hey, I'm not going to be around and we need to talk. You need to not say, leave your job outside the door. And if you're going to be prejudiced, find a different job. because it's going to get you
Exactly.
in trouble
That's true.
sooner or later. I mean, we know what happened up in Minnesota when he stepped on a guy's throat for 9.5 minutes. I mean, we know what happened in Ferguson. I mean, they're making everybody look bad. And there's too many good cops out there that the bad cops are making everybody look bad. I mean, we have a convention out here in Las Vegas every year for 2.5 days. We're all retired and we talk about it. And we always go over what happened over the last year. And we've all come to the conclusion we would never be police officers today. We're all retired from Anchorage. And it's so bad right now. The way people holler defund the police and all this type of stuff, it's ridiculous. It is. Because you don't want to defund the police. You want to kick out the bad ones. But they don't say kick out the bad ones. They just want to defund everybody. If you get one bad one, they just want to fire everybody. And one bad one makes it look bad for everybody. And they just, that's the way it's turning out. I mean, it's ridiculous. But it's a family decision. And that's the most important thing. A cop, a police officer, and his wife or fiance or girlfriend have got to communicate. That's important. Do research. Find out what it's like to be the wife of a cop. I mean, when we go to we got things that says wife number 3, wife number 4. When we do this thing every year, it's really cute. I mean, when I was in retail after I got retired, I had a woman come into my store in Western Chicago, and she was wife number 8. Her husband was the chief of police, and she said,
Wow.
"Damn it, I'm going to be the last one." I mean, she bragged about it.
That's hilarious.
I mean, even in London, when I was doing my research on the book, England police departments, like, their divorce rate is 2 times higher than everybody else's um, occupation up there. It's just not in the United States. It's all over.
Yep.
Is it communication? What is it? It's it's a tough job. It really
Yeah.
is. And
Well,
cops just don't want to talk about their job because it's difficult. You tend to get this black and white attitude. When you see blood and guts all day, you just don't want to talk to people about it. I mean, I closed up with my kids. I mean, it took me a while before I finally started to open up to my kids again, even though that they're now grown. And my daughter learned about that. She said, "Dad, I know what you went through." You know,
well,
so
with that case of like having multiple, partners, I guess the reason, or possibly the reason behind that, is that wife number one was not really aware, or like you said, they were not able to communicate with his partner, who is a police officer, and that's why they're having a lot of arguments. Now, wife number two comes in, it's the same thing, and wife number three comes in as well, and it's going on and on up until you reach to the maximum limit, to whatever is your limit for the number of wives. But that's really sad that it causes divorce or separation at some point, that you were just because you did not communicate to your first love, or first wife. So it's really really sad. But to those who are watching us live right now, like what I mentioned earlier, kindly get a copy of Steven's book. It's available in Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. And by the way, Steve, I was just wondering, do you have a website where they can get into?
We're working on it, but anybody can contact me at sverzal.com,
Hmm.
and hopefully my website's going to be up pretty soon.
That's great. That's
Well, I hope
interesting. And
so. Yeah, but sverzal.com, and I'll be more than happy to take care of them.
any social media accounts, Steve, like
Uh,
Facebook?
we're working on that too.
Okay.
I am on Yahoo.
Okay. So they can also contact you to your through your email. What about any events in the next coming weeks or so? Are you going to be doing some kind of shows maybe or
At the
presentation
book
of your
fair.
books?
Yeah, I'll be at the book fair in New York, and
Oh,
then
wow.
I'm going to be at the book fair, and then I'm planning on going to Los Angeles in April for a book signing.
Wow.
I'm already
Well, good
planning
luck.
that.
Well, good luck with
Yes,
that. And I mean, that might be a plan right now, but that can be a real thing once that happens already, or once that event is already happening. But I just want to thank you so much, Steve, for your time today. I really appreciate that. I learned a lot from you today, especially with when it comes to communication. That is absolutely true. Whatever profession that you're into right now, I mean, you gotta, or even if you're not a in a in any kind of job right now, something like that. Let's say you don't have a job, communication is still very important. In order to build a strong relationship to your partner, and I really love that part right there. Thank you so much, Steve.
exactly right. Thank you very much.
Well, as we say here with Readers Magnet, we share your story with the world. Have a wonderful day, Steve.
You too. Thank you again.